Welcome into the Sources Say podcast, your go-to Kentucky basketball podcast on the KSR Podcast Network, presented by Club Blue. Club Blue is the official collective partner of the University of Kentucky. I am your host, Jack Pilgrim of Kentucky Sports Radio. Very excited to be joined once again by Shawn Smith. Shawn, how the heck are you, buddy?
I'm fantastic, Jack. It's been a while. Should we introduce ourselves again?
No kidding. There we go.
It's been what, June? I almost forget. Yeah, I would have forgot my X and Twitter handle there. If that hadn't popped up, I wouldn't have got it today. It's been a while.
So let's talk. Let's explain to the class what has happened. Did we plan on taking the entire month of July off? No, but sometimes life gets in the way and creates just an unavoidable situation that you just kind of have to roll with the punches and say, hey, it wasn't our time. The month of July was just not our time to be on Sources Say, or work for that matter. I mean, I've basically not been working the entire month of July for various reasons, but we'll get into that in just a second. But the first week-ish of July, so July 5th through the 10th, I had a trip planned to Newfoundland, Canada. It was basically an extended funeral for my grandmother. Last year, she died. Actually, on my way to Peach Jam, July 18th is when she passed, and she kind of always had this dream of, not just, getting put in a casket and put 6 feet under. She always wanted to, have her ashes spread back home in Canada, where her late husband is buried. My grandfather, Billy, who I named my son after. I never got to meet him personally, but she always just adored him and talked just so beautifully of him. And so she always wanted to go back home and be, have her ashes spread where, my grandpa is buried. So we had planned this trip July 5th through the 10th to go back. It was her birthday, was July 8th, to go back home to Newfoundland and kind of see all the sights and sounds that she had always talked about, and, kind of have this ceremony for her. And it was beautiful. It was amazing. Everything I kind of dreamed of. We were able to do that and honored her in a really incredible way, and just really, really appreciated that opportunity, knowing that, when we come back home, my second child's due date was August 2nd, which, as you can see on the calendar right now, it's not even still August 2nd right now. The plan was to take a couple days, get back into the groove of things, and go down to Peach Jam, where we kind of, get the recruiting intel, talk to the coaches, do all that fun stuff. And so we go down to Peach Jam, knowing that, Katie, my wife, is feeling a little weird about her pregnancy. Like, hey, this thing kind of feels like it's moving a little bit more quickly than we expected. We went to the doctor that Tuesday. We left Wednesday for Peach Jam, but on Tuesday, the doctor was just kind of like, yeah, he's definitely bigger than expected. Kind of feels like this is going to be an early one. Not sure how early exactly, but something to just kind of monitor and keep in mind. So we're like, all right, feel safe enough to go down to Peach Jam, while also just kind of knowing that there's a chance that things could get hectic, and we'll just have to roll with the punches when the time comes. So I get in the car with Jacob Polachek. We drive down to Peach Jam, and I tell him going into it, like, hey, probably not going to happen, but there is a non-zero chance that when we get down there, I'm going to have to turn right back around and go home and figure out what's going on with Katie and my baby. So he's like, all right, yeah, cool. Sounds good. We get down to Peach Jam that Wednesday afternoon, knock out a couple of the interviews, and it's, it's cool. Wake up Thursday morning, and some developments overnight with Katie, my wife, that kind of showed signs of progressing maybe a little faster than we expected, but maybe like, okay, maybe at the end of the weekend or something. Definitely sooner rather than later, but not imminently. So we're like, okay, tell Jacob, like, hey, just so you know, we're still on our radar, something to definitely keep in mind. And about 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock on that Thursday, Katie is taking a nap, and she wakes up abruptly from her nap with pretty serious contractions. I'm like, oh boy, that's not good. That's definitely not good. I'm 8 hours away in North Augusta, South Carolina. Not really in place for me to jump in the car and get the heck out of here. But I was like, okay, well, I got to commit to this. This isn't something I can just, jump in the car and be there in 20 minutes. Like, if you're having this baby, you got to be pretty darn sure that you're having this baby, because I got to commit and go all in and jump back on the car and get out of here if that's the case. So we kind of give it a second, wait, okay, let's see if there are any other signs to show that this is happening. Somewhat consistent contractions following that up, and we're like, okay. She calls the doctor and is kind of feeling her out, saying, hey, how are things going? Is this something that we should be monitoring, taking seriously, whatever? During that, the live period just starts on that Thursday to go run through Sunday. So the coaches had just arrived. The college coaches had just arrived, went up to, Mark Pope, kind of just said, hey, what's going on, man? Good to see you around. And I said, just expert opinion, one man to another, not totally out of the realm of this job, not looking for inside scoop or anything, just wanting to chat with somebody who's the father of 4 daughters. My wife just had a couple, somewhat serious contractions, she thinks. At what point would you jump in the car and drive home the 8 hours? He's like, why are you talking to me right now? You need to get in the car and go. You need to leave right now. I'm like, oh. Then Alvin Brooks III, who has 2 sons himself, he actually says, so that's how my son was born. I was at a camp in Las Vegas, and my wife called and said, I'm going into labor. You need to get your butt home. So he was like, coming from somebody who has been in your shoes right now, you need to leave right now. Like, just don't even think twice about it. Just get in the car and go. I was like, oh man, I was not expecting that. Like, I kind of thought about it, the possibility of it, but I never thought that it would actually happen. So I'm talking with Jacob about like, hey, I think this is a reality. I think this is something I'm going to have to do. Are you okay with me? I'm your ride. Can you figure out a way home? How is this going to work for you? And he's like, yeah, don't worry about it. I'll take care of it. And then Pope comes back over to me and goes, hey, Jacob, record this for me. And it's Pope looking at the camera and telling Katie through the camera, hey, I am kicking Jack out of the gym so you can go have this baby. Here is your excused absence from work. So, Steven, I don't know if can you play the audio for that? If it comes through.
Katie, we're kicking him out of the gym. Go have a baby. Right. Katie, we're kicking him out of the gym. Go have a baby.
All right, so I get kicked out of the gym, go back to the hotel, pack up my stuff as fast as possible, drive the 8 hours back home. I pull into the driveway at 12:15. All very real story, promise. The bottom of my heart, cross my heart, hope to die. My head hits the pillow at 12:15 a.m. At 12:30, Katie's water breaks. We pack up all of our stuff. I didn't even unpack my suitcase. Like, literally just, it's still sitting there from Peach Jam. Didn't have to use any of my clothes. Take that suitcase straight to the hospital, and we go, and the baby comes at 4:15 in the morning. And the craziest part of all that, so we check in at like 1 o'clock or so, and they start doing the tests, and it by the time you get checked in, it's like one little step after the other. They take your information, and a lot of little individual things that kind of take up a couple hours or so. By the time, so we get into our room, they're waiting for the doctor to come in, and it's about 4:08 at that point. We're definitely ready to start pushing and doing this thing. Doctor comes in at 4:08, puts her gloves on, says, all right, let's do this thing. With 5 minutes later, she only pushed for 5 minutes, baby pops out. And what the craziest part of all of this, start the show about, going back home to Newfoundland to, my grandmother, and, spreading her ashes. She passed away on July 18th. Her birthday was July 8th. So it is July 18th when we're doing all of this. And she passed away at 4:15 p.m. last year. So at 4:15 a.m., baby comes out, and like, we're holding it, and the doctor's in the back, says 4:15. And it's just like this, like, super emotional, like overwhelming, like how did this all happen? Like, 14 hours ago, I was in the gym in North Augusta, and now I'm holding my new son in my hands. It was just the most overwhelming, indescribable emotions I could possibly imagine. So very surprisingly had to take a 2-week paternity leave, and wasn't expecting to take this time off work, but I did because, you know, I have two kids under 2, and it's been a lot. It's been a very, very hectic July, and barely have worked at all, but there's a reason why we haven't done any of these shows, and it's because got a second son, very surprisingly, and very, very blessed that it happened the way it did, and all of the things that put together. So, Shawn, I'm sorry for yapping this entire time, but it was a story I had to tell, and to not being able to do a show. I've missed doing this as consistently as we've been doing it, but sometimes when duty calls, you just gotta, you know, answer the bell.
Yeah, well, I mean, first of all, congratulations to you and Katie, and you know, I was reading the story that you've written about, you know, your grandmother, like just a couple of days before that. And I thought that was one of the best things that you have written and put out there in your work at KSR. But then you send me the picture. First I saw it on social media, but then you send me the picture later that evening, and I was like, man, we're probably not going to be doing Sources Safe for a couple of weeks here, because then I went on vacation and just got back. So this was kind of that period of July, Jack, where I guess it's technically not dead period, but it was that for us when it comes to this. But we're back, and we got a good one coming today.
Yeah, I think the patience will be worthwhile, because we got so much good stuff to talk about. While I wasn't able to write articles and do, you know, the, you know, conversational stuff on KS Board the way I used to, and the way I love doing, I was able to work the phones a little bit and you know, really kind of dig in the free time that I have had to, you know, kind of get to the bottom of, you know, what's going on inside the Joe Craft Center. And I feel like, you know, but we've talked a ton, obviously, Shawn, and, you know, in that time, and just kind of bouncing ideas off one another. You know, we haven't been able to do this on the show, but, you know, being able to kind of, you know, pick each other's brains about, hey, I'm hearing this. What do you think about this? Hey, you know, I heard that, you know, this lineup was out there today. You know, do you think that's going to work? So I feel like we both together have a pretty solid pulse of what the team looks like, you know, what our expectations should be going into the fall, and, you know, knowing the caveats of Colin Chandler has been out with, you know, dealing with a little bit of a, you know, minor injury. I'm told he is back, actually returned to practice today. So that's definitely a big positive, but wasn't a part of that scrimmage with La Familia and some of the, you know, practices leading up and the 5-on-5s in the days since, but is officially back. That's a great update. And also just the obvious with Andrea Yelovic still not on campus, and, you know, Jaden Quaintance being Jaden Quaintance and dealing, you know, with the rehab and recovery with a torn ACL. So all of those things being said, Shawn, without having 3 core pieces, the rest of the bunch, I feel like the two of us together have a pretty solid pulse of where things stand, and you know, what our expectations should be once we kind of get into the meat and potatoes of training camp, off season, preseason, I guess is probably a better way to put it, and, you know, leading up to that October, November stretch where the regular season starts. So any kind of big picture takeaways, I guess, in terms of optimism, like, hey, I was feeling this type of way before summer practices and even like after the first couple weeks, but now that we're wrapping up, I believe August 7th is the last day of summer workouts before they take a 2-3 week break and return at the end of August. Any changes for you after some of our conversations and things you've learned on your end?
I think just the confidence in this being one of the better teams in college basketball in the SEC is growing for me through the summer, which is what you want, right? Like, you don't want to have these expectations coming out of spring, and then you get into this period and be like, okay, well, this guy's behind, or this guy's behind, or maybe this guy's not doing what we thought initially. Obviously, having guys out, you don't get that chemistry developed that you're going to get when you get deeper into the fall and into the winter, but you are still getting to get those practices in, and then that scrimmage atmosphere, and just being able to scrimmage La Familia the way they have the last couple of summers, Jack. It's a massive thing for this team to do it and to get that game experience against former pros or some maybe current guys. and to kind of see what you are and what lineup combinations you have and what do the freshmen look like in their first real experience of someone else that's not just a group of guys that are learning the same thing that they're learning every day in practice. So I think just the confidence meter is up for me. And I guess more so the things that you're hearing about those guys that were brought in to give that experience, like a Mo Diabate, Denzel Aberdeen, those guys kind of leading the charge. Jaylen Low, and how impressive the things that Jack that we're hearing about him leading the charge and expect him to do as the point guard for Kentucky this year, and kind of changing the pace and the way the things he can do on the floor. So just overall, I think it's just all a big confidence piece that has kind of stepped up for me the last few weeks.
Yeah, I totally agree. I'd say if you're looking for, all right, who are the standouts? Who are the guys that have clearly separated themselves from the pack? I would say it's a 1A, 1B situation with Otega Oweh and Jaylen Low. I've heard really, really good things about Jaylen Low. And like you said, just his ability to push the tempo. And I think there's just a level of confidence for him, knowing how much talent is around him, where he can not revert back to the old habits of taking bad shots and, force feeding guys and feeling the need to just kind of overcorrect and, do a little bit too much. I feel like there is a sense of comfort with him now that allows him to kind of thrive in a way that maybe he hasn't even seen in his own abilities, getting downhill, getting paint touches, playing off 2 feet, creating for, there's such a gravity with him once he gets those paint touches where, he's such an elite player and finisher and can create, crafty player around the rim that it, creates okay, we got to attack him while also leaving guys wide open on the corner or, back at the top of the key, whatever. He just has this gravity to him as a point guard that you can believe long-term as kind of an all SEC guy. He carries himself like an all SEC point guard. And I think if you're looking for, like, hey, what is the one thing that you kind of need to feel really good about this team? I think it kind of starts and finishes with Jaylen Low. He plays a ton. I heard, in that scrimmage that he played, 95% of the minutes at point guard, and then the complimentary guy was Denzel Aberdeen when the time came. And there are some workarounds with it, and I do think that kind of comes with all right, you're leaning a lot on him. There's a lot of weight on his shoulders to be that guy. You can't get injured. Like, his availability is the most important on the entire roster, and that's a scary predicament knowing where we were this time last year. But the talent is so clear. The potential is so clear. And yes, he got to clean up some of the, little things, and turnovers are, still there. He's kind of an off and on 3-point shooter, gets hot, but also goes through cold stretches to be expected. But he can be an all SEC guy, assuming he stays healthy. And Otega is Otega Oweh and continues to be Otega Oweh. Really have heard good things about his confidence growing and being, kind of taking his game to another level. Maybe coasting a little bit, kind of feeling like this time it's important, but kind of just itching to get to the real stuff later on in the next couple of months. So that, see probably the best version of him here once the season starts. But I think that's a clear 1A, 1B with Jaylen and Otega, Shawn.
And that's a good 2. That's a really good 2. And I think the biggest thing with Jaylen, right, is when you go back to Kentucky last year, they didn't have, Lamont could get downhill and could get to the paint and do some things, but I just feel like Jaylen's got a shiftiness to him to be able to get to his spots and create opportunities for teammates in transition. We know that this team is going to prioritize pitching the ball ahead off of makes and off of misses and getting the ball down the floor quickly. That's always something Mark Pope wants to do. I don't know if last year's team was able to do it at the clip that he wanted to get some of those quicker transition threes. And then this team, we don't know yet, right? We don't know how this team's going to shoot the ball overall as a group. Like that probably will be an area of concern entering the year, just to look at and say, okay, is this team going to be able to shoot it just as efficiently as last year? And we've talked about some things about how you can kind of navigate that and actually make it a positive with some of the other areas that they can impact. But with Jaylen Low, Jack, and the being able to not only advance it with the pass, but also having a guy that can kind of knife and carve his way, that can also get to the rim, can stop and pull up and make a 3-point jumper, but also find a teammate in transition and these guys getting to deep corners in transition. So I think that's where his impact is probably going to be felt the most and has been felt the most in these early looks at what this team's going to look like without some key pieces that are going to do some of those other things and feed off of that. But when you've got Ortega that can get downhill and you get a guard that can do it, and then if you got a couple of guys that can knock down shots, I mean, that's a game changer and an instant offense creator for you when you got a point guard that can do that.
Don't call me crazy here, or call me, I mean, you can call me crazy, but I hope the fans don't overreact to what I'm about to say, but I feel he is somewhere between a better version of Xavier Wheeler. I know that's a very polarizing thing to say. Don't just patience. The best version of Xavier Wheeler, which was still a very good basketball player who can make shots, who doesn't kind of get that tunnel vision and kind of hunt assists the way that we really didn't like about Xavier Wheeler. Imagine kind of fine tuning those things, taking him out of and not 5'2". Like imagine the best version of that. Or if you're looking for kind of the, superstar comparison, what he could be, kind of like a poor man's De'Aaron Fox. Super shifty, super athletic, gets downhill and just, kind of has that speed where he can go from point A to point B in the blink of an eye. He has that stuff to his game, while not being 6'5" and the superstar athlete that has made De'Aaron Fox an all-pro. Like they're just somewhere in that category, which is a very, 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 very good basketball player, especially at this level. So I'm definitely optimistic about Jaylen Low going into the season and where he stands as the guy. I'd say the next tier of safe bets of guys that you can trust and feel really, really good about. I think Mo Diabate has been awesome. I think his versatility and, heard in that scrimmage, he was guarding Andrew Harrison out on the perimeter and, Aaron Harrison and then, guarding bigs, and just his ability to just do anything on the floor, that plug and play, ultimate toolsy guy, is going to be super valuable. Plays really well in transition, tough finisher around the basket, can kind of get that bully ball. I'm going to put my head down and get you a tough basket at the rim that maybe last year's group outside of Ortega really didn't have. So I really, really love that. And, Denzel Aberdeen's kind of the guard version of that, where I don't think he is the most prolific shooter, can, hit shots, but, not a guy that you're going to lean on to be a 40% 3-point shooter, but he's going to live in that 35-ish%. I think that's enough, but he does so well getting downhill, and he's an athlete, just an above the rim athlete who embraces physicality and also picks up 94 feet and he's a high level defender. So those two guys, I'm going to throw in a sneaky kind of extra guy. Trent Noah has been awesome. I've heard really, really good things about Trent Noah. Shooting just insane numbers, catch and shoot from three. His percentage is by far the highest on the team, and is doing really, really interesting things. Has emerged as kind of this vocal leader and wanting to establish himself as one of the guys. He played a ton in that scrimmage, and again, without Colin Chandler, without some of the other forwards that Kentucky didn't have available, that's to be expected. But he was definitely, he started, and then he also was kind of always in the mix a bit beyond that. So I've heard really, really good things. I'd say those three are probably the safest bets beyond the 1A, 1B with Jaylen and Ortega. But those three have been, probably the most consistent group of five that we've seen with Kentucky this summer, Shawn.
Yeah, and the thing with some of these guys, right, like a Trent Noah, Jack, it's going to be, is your role different than what it was a year ago? Like last year, we know injuries kind of just took a hit and took a toll on this team, and they needed every guy available on the roster. And Trent kind of got that opportunity based off of that. Now he made the most of it, but what is that role this year? Is it to grab 3 or 4 rebounds in a key SEC game at some point in February? We know he can do that. Is it to knock down an open 3 or 2? Is it to get a tough bucket or a defensive rebound when the game's on the line in the final 3 or 2 minutes of the game? Whatever that is, I would trust that Trent's going to try to carve out that role. But if he can consistently find a way to make shots on a team that we're actually talking about maybe won't shoot it as effectively as what they did a year ago as a team percentage, that's a way to get on the floor, right? Especially early in the year where maybe there's a guy that, like, we're going to wait and see about Jaden Quaintance, where he is with his health. Like, is there minutes available at a spot like that you can slide in and maybe eat 8, 9, 10, 11 minutes a game early? And do you make the most of it? I think he's a guy that you watch to do that because, one, he has experience in this program that's going to pay off, because you can't microwave this stuff. Even though that these guys have had college experience here, we know it's different, Jack. And playing in this system gives you an advantage as well, that you've gone through the actual battles against these teams in Mark Pope's system. So I think that he's a guy to watch, obviously, and clearly hearing good things about him from the summer is a positive. But that's what you wanted to hear about the guys returning, is they've taken their game to another level or stepped it up to kind of see, where they are in year 2 of Mark Pope era.
And I'd say Colin Chandler, knowing the injury and just, being the lack of availability in recent weeks, has kind of thrown a wrench into that a little bit, but he got off to a really strong start. I heard great things, especially about his shooting, that Trent was by far and away the best shooter on the team, but Colin kind of flirting as that, like, hey, on any given Sunday, he was the guy on the floor. So I think we'll see how he finishes this last week and a half or whatever. Once he gets back into the full swing of things. I think he was a full contact participant today as well. So I think that's a huge positive. But I heard really good things about him before, he kind of had to take a step back. So, kind of keeping a very close eye on that as well. I guess I do want to transition into the front court. And I do think if I have a couple questions about this team and what that could look like coming out of the summer, and things that definitely need to be addressed going into the fall and early winter, obviously. But the front court, there are some questions. Before that, though, I do want to quick message from our friends at Roback. Speaking of Roback, our friend, look at this, the Rupp Arena polo, looking as spectacular as ever. I love showing this polo off every chance I get, but you can change the game with Roback, a proud partner of KSR. Get the best fit and the best feel with their incredibly comfortable activewear, from polos and quarter zips to shorts and Delta performance pants. You will look good and feel good with Roback. Use promo code KSR for 20% off your first purchase at roback.com. I promise you won't find any better apparel out there, especially with those UK logos on it. Big fan. Front court, I think Jaden Quaintance has to get healthy. Andre Yelovic, it's my understanding, I think could be here right now if they wanted it to. I think it was a mutual decision, Shawn, for once it got to the point. So here's the issue. The plan initially was kind of an early July arrival, because his school didn't even end until late June. So they kind of thought, in a best case scenario, that he'd finish up with school late June, get all of the paperwork in and get cleared and all that stuff, and be able to arrive in the second maybe week of July, and then have the rest of July and then early August to get comfortable and acclimated and get his living situation figured out and all that. It took a minute for the transcripts to come in. I was told that the visa and getting him over here, like, legally, is totally cleared. There's no issue with that. The holdup was with the transcripts, getting him over in a timely manner. That by the time they got the transcripts, and they do have those, he is good to go. No question about it at this stage. It got to the point where he would arrive like now, while also understanding that summer workouts end, they take that break August 7th. So as we remember, when they first arrived in early June, they took the first 2-ish weeks to just focus on conditioning, just focus on, weight training and, doing the conditioning tests and all those things. So he would just be getting into those things right now, kind of isolated from the team. While the rest of the team's doing 5-on-5 stuff, he would kind of be doing his own thing. And I think both sides just agreed that wasn't really fair for a kid coming over from out of the country. His welcome to Lexington shouldn't be all right, you're the outsider at this stage, you can focus on your conditioning stuff while the rest of us are having fun with 5-on-5. They wanted to bring him in with his teammates start of the fall semester, kind of do it the right way, where his welcome to Kentucky is a more favorable one, that makes him more comfortable and makes him feel at home a little bit better. It just made more sense that why fit this tight squeeze in, knowing that we just have to we go on break in a week and have to kind of start all over at that stage, because I mean you have to kind of redo the conditioning process and all that stuff at that point. So I think they just wanted to bring him in with the rest of the guys, and everybody's going to be coming in like August 24th or 26th, something like that. And that's the expectation, when he's going to come in with the rest of the guys, and no hiccups, no concerns. They feel like they've gotten all the snags out, and now it's just about logistics and timing. So no concern with that whatsoever. Great news. I feel really, really good about Yelovic getting here and his impact. I've heard awesome things about what he's going to be on this roster. So Jaden Quaintance, need him to get healthy. Still have heard he's trending the right direction for an early start of the season arrival and participation, not arrival on the court. Probably not going to be ready for the start of the regular season. I think that's more of a coaching decision than a player decision. I think if it were up to him, he would play, open the season with the Cats, but I think they're going to be very cautious with him and how quickly they get him on the floor. I would expect something like December. I kind of have in my mind that they're going to kind of slow play him to start with, and then, really ramp things up December. So I've kind of have had that timeline in the back of my mind. So those two things being said, I think the bigs we have right now with Brandon Garrison returning and Malachi Moreno, I think the gap is much closer than people think. And I don't know if that's a good thing. Brandon Garrison, obviously did a lot of good things last year. We saw him, win some games for Kentucky and have this like high level, the energy matching the production and the versatility and what he can do at his size and with his skill. You really can't replicate that. There are not many bigs in the country that can do what he does. But I think the maturity and the decision making and some of those things that you expected to take a jump at this stage of the summer, coming out of, the narrative was Amari was going to take him under his wing, and this was going to be kind of a year of growth for him, and he's going to be ready to take that junior leap as the guy anchoring the front court, and he just hasn't been that quite yet. He's had moments. There were a couple stretches in that scrimmage that I heard about that, he would just do this unbelievably great thing. There was one sequence somebody talked about that he, blocked a Andrew Harrison layup at the rim, or contested it. Archie Goodwin tried to get the putback on the offensive rebound. He blocks that, gets the rebound, takes it coast to coast, fakes off Deron Lamb with Jasper Johnson on the wing, hits Denzel Aberdeen in the corner for a no-look assist, wide open, catch and shoot from the three, bang. And it was just like, whoa, that's a two-way superstar. That's a lottery pick right there. And then the next possession, he clangs the lob off the rim to Otega Owe and then fouls on a three on the other end. And it was just like, how are we still doing this at this stage of your career, having the highest of high moments and then still having some lows that you're like, dude, at what point are we going to get over some of these things? So it's still there. I still believe in him. There's a reason. If there were ever a time for these types of things to happen, it's right now in July versus in October and November, and certainly during the season. But he hasn't solidified that spot in a way that you would probably maybe expect, Sean. While Malachi, I think, maybe doesn't have the superstar moments of the whoa, baby, here we go, while also being just this massive safety net. Like the way he takes up space and the way he grabs rebounds and just makes the smart reads and the smart plays and blocks shots and just does things a massive 7-footer playing SEC basketball should. I do kind of, this is just me talking, this is no intel talking to anybody around the program, just my thinking sitting here on July 29th, I wonder at what point, if there is a point for Mark Pope, that he looks at both of those two options and says, I need the safe bet. I need to lean on the guy that I can lean, that I know isn't going to make just silly mistakes and kind of, do a couple of things that take you out of a game. I need a guy who might not be the superstar upside, but just run the offense the way you expect him to do. Kind of, Amari Williams, even if he wasn't on triple-double watch, he was still finding ways to impact the game as just a really safe bet player. And I wonder if Mark Pope wants, especially when Jaden Quaintance gets healthy and Andrew Yelovic finds his footing, here in Lexington, at what point does it become a one or the other kind of decision? And if he does start leaning into Malachi, that is just something I'm monitoring at this stage of the summer. Could totally change. Brandon could get it together and figure things out, and it could click for him, and this could be a stupid conversation. But as things stand right now, I just think that back and forth is a lot closer than people think between Malachi and BG.
Yeah, I would agree with that, and I think a lot of it too. Obviously, the health of Jaden Quaintance plays a lot into that scenario. Like Kentucky needs Jaden Quaintance to be healthy and full go, obviously at some point. But then again, Jack, the offensive focal point of the way Kentucky likes to run offense. We've talked about that we can see Mo Diabate doing some of those things in the middle third of the floor that we saw Amari doing a year ago. Maybe they go with a smaller guy in that role that's a versatile piece that can do similar things. But we know that, BG's got some experience in it. Malachi, I think, is comfortable doing it as well. So I think that will play a part in it. But I think you're right. Like when you look at Malachi, you look at a guy that, not really anticipating an NBA jump, right out of the you're seeing a young piece that's got a lot of growth in his game, that if maybe you're not getting what you're wanting or what you're expecting somewhere else, maybe how solid you are on the perimeter and at those forward spots, maybe you do lean into that younger guy and give some opportunities. But I think a lot of it will depend on what JQ's health and status is. That at some point I would expect Jaden Quaintance to be the guy that leads that front court. Obviously Yelovic, and how impactful can he be when he does arrive, and what is that transition like? Is it going to be these guys going through the transition that they've had, the newcomers? He's going to have the same one when it comes to getting in the program, getting in the building, getting in the workouts, weight room, everything that's going to have to go into play. So I think, Jack, the biggest thing here with this, and you've got enough, right? But right now you're missing two key important pieces to that front court. So it's hard to really judge it, but you're judging the young guy versus the guy that you're expecting to take that leap. And that's a good comparison. But the middle's still missing from it. But you can't let one area of the floor cost you a chance at a national title.
Mm-hmm.
And you feel so solid about the perimeter. You feel very solid about those two-way pieces on this roster, like a Cam Williams, Mo Diabate being able to defend on the perimeter, Denzel Aberdeen being able to pick up 90-plus feet. You got to figure out the front court. What is the recipe there to make sure that it matches the backcourt? Because if you get it together, Jack, I think that this team will be one of the better teams in college basketball and have a shot at being a final weekend team. If you have one of those weaknesses, you maybe settle in where you ended this past year. So that's where the hard decisions come into play. There's still time, but that's definitely something to keep an eye on, especially with minutes available early, with not knowing how Yelovic is going to develop and transition, and also not knowing what Jaden Quaintance's progression is going to look like when it actually comes down to getting on the floor.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Which is a big opportunity for Malachi, right? Because there are minutes there early. And that's where I was coming back around to Trent Noah.
He's going to play.
Too. And that's where I was coming back to minutes around Trent Noah earlier too. But Mo Diabate at the three, like some different things that they can do with these pieces, that versatility that, last year I thought Trent had to just kind of get shoved on the floor and just kind of fit into a space. Where this year you can probably slide more people more into a natural position of where they feel comfortable because of that versatility that they can do. That probably gets Malachi an opportunity early, just because that he can do some things that other guys can't. Like Malachi Moreno is an elite shot blocker. Like his length, obviously 7 foot tall. I know it helps, right? But I think he gets off the floor well. I think he reads offensive players well and making those decisions of when. to go and when not to go. And I think that he's going to have a pretty good progression as a college basketball player. So it wouldn't shock me if he gets a run early.
Yeah, I think it's lighting that fire under BG, I think is awesome. Like, I think it's a really good thing and might kind of unlock the best version of him. Having, I think probably the worst case scenario for BG is not having a Malachi there behind him. And, especially when JQ shows up and plays the way they expect him to. Like, I think allowing him to be comfortable and not, really being tested to take the next jump that people kind of need from him, I think probably would have just solidified that he just kind of is who he is at this stage. I think having some real competition in that front court, knowing that he is the most experienced, but more of an equal playing field. Last year he knew what he was signing up for. He's talked about his 2-year plan and, hey, you're going to start out underneath, playing under Amari Williams. He's going to show you the ropes, and, your time to shine will be later. You're still going to get an opportunity, but your time to shine as the guy won't be until next year at the earliest. Now it is his time, but he has other guys kind of nipping at his heels saying, hey, I'm here. Like, I'm ready to let you know that I'll take your spot. I think he needs that. I think he needs that kind of drive and somebody to kind of light that fire under him to unlock the best version. I hope that comes.
And that probably is the biggest difference, right? From year one roster to year two roster is year one had a lot of faces to it, had a lot of super seniors, but I feel like year two's got a lot of guys with high end potential to be really good pros that are there pushing at your back, right? Like saying, I'm going to push you to go or I'm going to pass you. Like there's not like last year, the margin for error was razor thin last year for what that team had to do and how they had to execute to be what they were. It ended up being a really good season, one of the fun, probably one of the most fun seasons we've watched when it comes to enjoying games. But Jack, you felt it when you watched games. It's like, man, you could lose the game right here on this possession. Like, are they going to be able to knock down enough shots down the stretch? Are they going to be able to get that defensive stop? I didn't think that they had the level of athletes that this team has. So that added athleticism to the mix and college experience in elite college basketball programs of guys that have gone the distance and won a national title, been to Final Fours. That stuff's pushing. And then you got McDonald's All-Americans coming in as freshmen that are obviously was a missing piece too. Like you got guys that are driving you right there that's pushing former McDonald's All-Americans. Like that's the driving factor with this of why I think this team's going to be one of the more elite teams in college basketball. It's got a lot of faces, but it's got a lot of competition within that you either show up or you sit. And that's the dynamic I think that Mark Pope has in year two is that it's going to have the ability of the bench. And some guys are going to miss out just because others are better, but that doesn't really necessarily mean that they don't have a role in this program moving forward. But you got those guys that are juniors and upperclassmen, Jack, that they have to make an impact because you don't have to play them now because there are other pieces and you want to see those guys get opportunities. But I think the competition within practice and within those walls when everyone's available and everyone's here, I think it's one of the biggest reasons why this team can be one of the better ones in the country.
And I think including BG in this, I think the next couple of players that we talk about will decide. I think when we're talking about the floors of last year's group versus this year's group, I think the floors are similar. I do think that this year there are enough guys that even if, one guy doesn't live up to his potential or, maybe this freshman, if Jasper doesn't become the high-level shot maker that we need him to be, then the season is toast. Like, I don't think that, those kind of questions are going to be had this season because I do think that Otega and Jaylen Low with Mo Diabate and Denzel Aberdeen just raise your floor so much alongside Trent Noah. I think that core group of guys is going to win you games the same way last year's group is. Like, I think that is a really high floor group. The question is, I think the upside and potential of this year's group is truly championship level, Final Four level, if some things happen the way we kind of need them to. And I think BG figuring it out and having things click for him is a part of that equation. But I'd say this next core of guys, based on what I've heard, will kind of decide if this is another Sweet 16 team that I think is the kind of the floor of this group versus a national championship, hanging banner number 9 up, which is the upside that I don't think last year's group necessarily had. I'd say Cam Williams is probably the safest bet of those guys, while also acknowledging he's had some highs and lows and kind of especially navigating the toughness and the physicality. I think he kind of fits in a mold of last year's group where he was super skilled, maybe not putting the ball on the floor, kind of more of a strict kind of 3-and-D guy, but he is such a high-level shot maker. He's a very solid athlete while also having the length to block shots and be kind of a pest on the defensive end. Struggles a little bit, putting the ball on the floor, getting downhill. That's not really his game. Dealing with the physicality and the toughness, I think that's kind of been a little bit of a whoa adjustment period for him that I'm high on Cam Williams, but maybe need to take a step back on him being like we talked that NBA draft net or whatever saying that he was, the number 6 pick. That's not happening. But there's a path for him to be a really, really high level player, but just kind of expectations just kind of need to be adjusted a little bit for what he is as a player. But if he can kind of hit on the highest points as a shot maker and shot blocker and can be, use his length and tools to be kind of like like an Antonio Reeves light, I think is maybe a good way to put it, as a nice catch and shoot guy who can do some interesting things, with his physical tools. I think he can be that guy. We'll see how things go there. Jasper Johnson, he's giving very, similar early Rob Dillingham vibes. You remember coming out of Toronto with the Global Jam when you saw some spurts of, whoa, baby, that's a lottery pick, while also knowing like, hey, this guy clearly has to put on some weight. This guy clearly has, an adjustment period that he's clearly in the middle of right now, and it's going to be a minute before he can kind of fire on all cylinders. I think Jasper has hit some growing pains, which to be expected. He kind of came in late with the USA stuff. He won gold, kind of sacrificed a couple of weeks of the early practices and the summer conditioning and strength program that he probably needs a little bit more than most guys on the team. I think Jasper will get there. It's just about how quickly he's able to get there to kind of find his footing as one of the main guys. I think they're going to lean on him quite a bit, and I think they're kind of making him uncomfortable right now. I've heard some things about them being pretty hard on him in practice and kind of saying, hey, I need 100% out of you. Like, I need you to be that, that enforcer. I need you to be, the hammer, not the nail. I think that's kind of an adjustment that Jasper's, kind of going through. And I just remember talking very similarly about Rob Dillingham at this stage, going, hey, he can get there. And he did get there, and I expect Jasper to do the same, but just how quickly, I think, is the bigger question right now. And I think Braden Hawthorne is probably further along than people around the program thought. I think he's unbelievably skilled. His length and athleticism, he has every tool that you could possibly dream of to be a future star. Like, I really do think he's going to be that guy, but it's going to be 3 years before he can be a star, 2 years before he can be a consistent contributor. Right now, you just kind of hope for, if he does get in the game, to just kind of get those spurts of, whoa, turns the ball over, gets, kind of pushed off his spots, really struggles with toughness and physicality and strength, just does not have that in his game yet. I mean, he is a $170 soaking wet right now. There's just not a lot to him right now, but he's so skilled, and he's just has every gift you could possibly dream of as a long-term piece. You just kind of hope that anything he can get at this point is just icing on the cake. Could he progress, hit the weight training hard right now, and then kind of find things and have him click later on this year and be a threat? Maybe. but he's still in kind of that potential group of he could change the ceiling of this group, but I just don't think he's going to change the floor of this group at all. So I think that group, BG, probably closer to the consistence than the inconsistence, but Cam Williams, Jasper, and Braden Hawthorne making up that next group. That's, I think, going to decide if Kentucky get one of those guys to hit at a high level. I think banner number 9 is absolutely in the conversation.
Yeah, and I think too, when you look at this team and you look at, what is probably the most important thing that develops and happens between now and, let's say, November 1st. That's when I'll put the date for like the season that you're kind of looking at and progressing. Like, okay, now we're playing some games that matter and are impactful. And that game against Purdue here is going to matter just because you're playing a team that could be one of the favorites to win the national championship. So you want to look and see what you got. And being at Rupp Arena, you don't want to lose. But those games that matter, that actually show up on a resume, will come after that. So how do people on this roster, how do these pieces accept their role? Probably one of the more important things about it, right? When you bring in a lot of guys that have had roles in other places and had roles on a national championship team and a Final Four team and Elite Eight team and all ACC guys and everything else, and returning guys in the SEC that are going to be maybe in the running for SEC Player of the Year, like an Otega Oweh. Maybe he's a AP All-American or something preseason or whatever he can be at the end of the year. There's a lot of things to mix and match, but how likely are these guys to accept that role and whatever it is to be beneficial to the team is probably the biggest factor with how this all plays out. I'm confident that Mark Pope will get it done. I'm confident that these guys will obviously see that the ultimate goal is to win basketball games here. And when you do that, you look better. Look at Kobe Bryant and Amari Williams this past year. And nobody thought Kobe Bryant was going to be a draft pick or be where he was. Like when we went into this thing last summer, we were talking about, could he be the odd man out because he hadn't been on the floor and ended up getting drafted? And he's going to be very successful doing what he does. Amari Williams, obviously, we know what he became.
Go Celtics.
Yeah, that's obviously that made you very happy. So how can these guys accept that role and what they're going to be? Some guys' roles will be the same as what they were at previous places. Some guys will have greater roles. Jack, some guys will actually take a lesser role. And if they're okay with that, then I think this thing works. But you mentioned we made it 47, 48 minutes before you mentioned the name Jasper Johnson. Mm-hmm. And that's the difference, right? Like we were able to name all these other guys that we know that have experience in college basketball, that have done it at a high rate and a high clip, that a guy that is a 5-star piece, a high major guy that was wanted and coveted by other big schools. We didn't even talk about him for the first 45 minutes of the show. That shows the depth. Colin Chandler obviously not been on the floor. That's a guy that I have a ton of confidence in that's going to be good the moment he is on the floor and is at full go. I think that he's going to be one of the better players and better pieces and most important guys that this team has. So all those things right there and accepting roles, I think, is probably going to be what determines how far this team can go, but also do they fall on the floor or do they scratch that ceiling that we think that they can get to?
Yeah, that's a really comfortable spot to be in, I think. Like, if you were to tell me going into this that, hey, the floor is a Sweet 16, the ceiling is banner number 9, like, I think you would take that every single off season and not think twice about it. Like, I just think there's so much to work with now that I just have a hard time feeling. Again, it was an expensive commitment for Kentucky to put together this depth and have a floor this high, because it took a heck of an offseason for Mark Pope and his staff to kind of, find the right pieces to come together and pay the costs that it did. But I do think that's going to lead to a really comfortable position for Kentucky fans to live in, where you can go into this year feeling that if the ball bounces the right way for a couple of these guys, that, this truly is a, I don't want to say championship or bust, but if like I said, that group of Cam Williams, Jasper Johnson, Braden Hawthorne include Jaden Quaintance and Andrea Yelovic in that group, but just because they are technically uncertainties right now, given their lack of availability. The group that is on the floor right now competing is a Sweet 16 team. If you can get any of those guys, say two, since we're including Yelovic and Quaintance, if you include two of those guys of that Quaintance, BG, Yelovic, Jasper, Cam, Braden group, two of those guys hit, Kentucky is a Final Four team. And I think every Kentucky fan that's watching this, listening to this, will kind of feel the same way. That's a really comfortable spot to be in July, knowing that there's only room for growth from here. There's only time for Jasper to hit, for Cam to hit, for Quaintance to get on the floor, for Yelovic to get here. There's so many things that can work in Kentucky's favor versus working against them.
And you mentioned the ball bouncing the right way for a couple of guys, right? Well, my confidence too, Jack, is if the ball bounces the wrong way for a guy. Like last year, when it come down to it, it bounced the wrong way for a couple of guys. Mm-hmm. Injuries really impacted the final result of where Kentucky ended up going, right? And we know that they were able to have guys available, but not having Jackson Robinson for the key stretch was a significant blow that last year's team just could not overcome when they needed it. So when you look at this year, I think having the guys there in place, the depth, and then those tweener guys that you're looking at that said, man, if this guy actually outperforms maybe what my expectations are in year one, then this team can be even better. But you have a core of guys there that if they get minutes, I think they're going to improve and maybe carve out a role if it comes down to that point. So the one spot that I just don't think that this team can have something happen to is, and I know we talked about the front court kind of being the question mark right now, just given the health, but if Jaylen Low goes down, mm-hmm. that's the one that I'm looking at that I think it changes Kentucky a lot. Mm-hmm. Now you've got Denzel Aberdeen that can slide in and do some work at the one. You've got Colin Chandler if you need it. You've got Otega Owe that can do some things, but being able to have that guy that just kind of guides the ship. And you've got the motor, right? You got all these other pieces, but the guy that's guiding the ship, like who's guiding it? And I think it's very important that he's the guy that's guiding it, steering it for the entire length and duration of the season with some help from some other pieces. And I think that allows Kentucky to be the best version of itself.
Yeah, I think you have three question marks that if they are answered, Kentucky's winning a national championship. I think Jaylen Low staying healthy. If he can stay healthy, I'm feeling pretty freaking sassy about things. 2, shooting. I don't think this team has any one flamethrower. Trent Noah probably the closest to that. Colin Chandler has done good things, but I think it's a group of a ton of capable shooters. And I think that's good enough, but you can't have any outliers in the wrong direction. Like you can't have Mo Diabate taking a massive step back as a shooter. He was a 40-ish, plus % 3-point shooter on low volume. Obviously not the prettiest shot. And, that's kind of one of those, where do things swing? BG kind of felt like he shot a lot of them and you got more confident in his ability as the year went on. But how confident are you in him being a guy? Is Yelovic, can he take can he be one of the, an upgrade over an Andrew Carr? Especially as a shooter, I think that's a real question. And, you gotta just have a bunch of guys that can be capable, and I'll feel really, really, really good about it. And maybe have, one hit, a Jasper Johnson, have him hit as a 42% 3-point shooter. I think on high volume, I think that would be a total game changer for this team. And then that front court, just some type of consistency. Give me 2, and that could be included with Yelovic hitting shots, but give me 2 of those guys that you can trust any given night. I think those questions are still there right now, but if you could tell me that, hey, we have 2 guys that we can lean on to kind of carry the weight and then to see what you get from the other guys of that 4-man group of Yelovic, Quaintance, BG, and Malachi, I'm feeling really, really good that this team is, cutting down the nets in next April, which is a really comfortable spot to be in. But that's a lot of ifs. I mean, that will take a lot to get there, but they definitely have the pieces to get there, I think, Shawn.
They do. They have the pieces. Now it's about can they get the guys that they don't have right now out there healthy, like Jaden Quaintance is a very, very important piece to how much upside this team has. And we know Colin Chandler obviously getting back. That's great news. But we'll see with Yelovic and his expectations for when he gets here. But I think the confidence meter on this team being really, really good should be high, with still that upside area, that room for that ceiling to go even higher if some of these things kind of hit. And maybe I'm not as worried about some of the things not working out, just because I do like what this team is and what it looks like, and just some of the things that we've been hearing from the last 2 to 3 weeks of them going through these summer practices. So I think they're in a good spot.
Yeah, I totally agree. Also in a good spot is our friends at Club Blue. Club Blue is the official collective partner of the University of Kentucky. Club Blue was founded by UK fans strictly to support the NIL efforts at the University of Kentucky. Unlike most collectives, 100% of subscriber money and 100% of donor money goes directly to NIL. Club Blue charges no fees. Club Blue subscribers receive some amazing benefits like invitations to special events, meet and greets with UK athletes, signed merchandise, monthly giveaways, ticket giveaways, Club Blue merch, and more. Subscribe today at www.clubbluenil.com. You get to pick which sport you want to support when you sign up. Choose your sport and support with Club Blue. I want to wrap this show up with maybe a transition a little bit into the recruiting side of things. Feeling good about where things stand on the court with Kentucky, but I'm also feeling pretty good about where things stand on the recruiting side as well, especially as it relates to the number one player in the country, Tyron Stokes, Louisville native. Part of the weirdness of that whole Peach Jam leaving after 7 minutes, what felt like I just got there and just had to pack my stuff up and leave. Of the day-ish that I got to spend down there, there was a lot of good Kentucky rumblings as it related to the number one player in the country and Tyron Stokes, and just he kind of had that vibe of, Kentucky being the team to beat as they sat. When you're sitting courtside watching a player, you kind of just get the vibe. You get the feeling of, hey, this is the front runner. This is the guy that, the staff that's sitting right here is the one that feels it's in best position to land this kid, while other coaches are sitting there to maybe overcompensate, where if they're behind for a kid, they'll be 4 deep sitting courtside to say like, hey, we're here, just so you know, we're not going anywhere. We want to make up ground. We want you to know that we're here for you. Other guys maybe just sending one assistant to say, hey, we're just checking the box to say that we watched him, not feeling the best about him. Kentucky was that school for Tyron Stokes, always sitting courtside, and there's just this level of like, Mark Pope watching him, there was just kind of a sense of like, hey, Mark Pope is watching his guy. You don't always get that when, he's sitting there watching Tay Kenny on the Adidas circuit. It kind of felt at times that he was just there to kind of check a box and say that, hey, I'm recruiting the local kid because I have to, knowing that behind the scenes, the rumblings are that he's trending toward Louisville pretty hard and pretty quickly. You don't get that vibe with Tyron Stokes. If anything, you get the opposite, that Kentucky is positioned extremely well for him. And it wasn't just one person kind of pushing that out there. It was a pretty firm consensus that Kentucky, as things stand as of July 29th, with still several visits to go, that Kentucky was the team to beat for Tyron Stokes, with just everybody else kind of fighting for that second place, third place, the positioning elsewhere with, you heard initially some Kansas rumblings. Those have kind of fallen off quite a bit. Louisville, you still hear just because he's from Louisville, but you don't hear that overwhelming confidence on Louisville side the way you hear with them with Tay Kenny. They'll tell everybody like, hey, Tay Kenny's our guy. He's our guy. He's our guy. You don't hear that same level of confidence with Tyron Stokes. Then Arkansas kind of feels like that next group right behind Kentucky is the most favorable, just because Tyron Stokes feels like a John Calipari kid. Like he just kind of has that same tough, rugged, an MFer kind of guy, and that's who John Calipari typically signs. He's done a great job in the past signing those types of guys and turning them into number one picks. So I'd probably kind of make this into, as things stand, John Calipari versus Mark Pope kind of head-to-head battle. And with Mark Pope, I think, leading the way. So we'll see. Still a long way to go. I haven't heard anything. Again, I've been, since leaving Beach Jam been pretty freaking disconnected beyond things outside of the Joe Kraft Center, but things come your way and not really going away as it pertains to Kentucky with Tyron Stokes. So my question to you, Shawn, is what would it mean to Mark Pope, to continue the streak of landing local kids and how important that's been for him, but this local kid in particular being the number one player in the country and deserving, and what's deemed a pretty weak class overall, 2026, probably one of the weakest in recent memory, having a sure thing like Tyron Stokes, I feel pretty confident that he's going to be a college star. He's going to be able to walk in day one and be that type of player. What would it mean to Mark Pope to be able to land the number one player in the country who happens to be from Louisville?
Yeah, that's the biggest fish, right? Like, we've talked about the fish that you've added in the portal and getting those big fish, but this is the biggest fish. Like, this is the one that you make a statement, entering, year 3 and where you currently stand as a program. You've produced NBA draft picks in year 1 from guys that you didn't really know if they were going to be NBA draft picks in their senior year at Drexel and Dayton. Like, you didn't think it was going to look like that. Now you've got a roster full of other pieces that could become NBA draft picks, but now you're trying to solidify yourself as that, not just the Kentucky brand of recruiting, but Mark Pope's Kentucky brand that we've talked about a lot over the last 14 to 15 months. So I think landing a piece like that and an instant impact star is a massive deal that would do wonders for Mark Pope's recruiting pitch for Kentucky.
And I want to give the why briefly, just kind of share part of my, why I wouldn't bet against the Cats right now, knowing Tyran and how he operates and just kind of who he is as a basketball player and things like that. Tyran has a reputation for being hard. I don't want to say hard to deal with, but he's difficult. He's a very difficult person and player for the right reasons. I think he is a winner of all winners. He is a competitive SOB that just obsesses over this stuff. And I think that there is something about Tyran that he wants to operate at a certain level. And if you can't match his level, it's, again, I'm a Patriots fan, so Tom Brady kind of had a similar mindset where he just competes harder than everybody else. Always first one in, last one out. He just has this reputation for being the toughest competitor in the world, and he would kind of get pissy with people and kind of have that reputation for, kind of being hard to deal with and work with. But it was for the right reasons. It was because he wanted to win at a level and didn't think that if he thought if you didn't want to win at the same level, he didn't want to work alongside you. And I think Tyran has a very similar identity where I think he wants to have somebody who's a like-minded basketball IQ guy. I think he's a brilliant basketball mind. And I think he wants to work alongside brilliant basketball minds. I don't think he's going to work well with a coach that just screams at him all day and that he can't relate to on a basketball level. I think he wants an intellectual, guy that kind of challenges him in that way, not challenges him in a toughness way or like, hey, I'm the big dog. I'm I'm your mentor. You need to listen to me. Like, he doesn't, that's not how he works. Could lean toward the nurturing route with if you bring the basketball intellect and the X's and O's, I think he's going to respect you more than if you just scream at his face. And I think that's what separates Mark Pope from everybody else recruiting him right now. I don't think that's John Calipari. I don't think that's Pat Kelsey's probably the closest to that. But Bill Self, I don't think is that way. And if that's the group of 4, I think Mark Pope gives you something that none of the other competitors give. And that's somebody who's going to match Tyron Stokes as a basketball mind. So I go based on what I've heard and the optimism surrounding, Kentucky's chances with him just in a vacuum, while also just kind of making an educational guess here beyond all of that it just makes a lot of sense for Mark Pope to be the guy to kind of push the right buttons for him. I think he's a guy that needs those right buttons to be pressed to reach the best version of Tyron Stokes' game. And I think Mark Pope is that coach for him. And I think he's quickly realizing that. So that'd be a big one. That would be a really massive one to kind of get that last little monkey off his back. People kind of criticizing him for not being able to land the big fish. I think Kentucky, I don't think money is an issue there. I think they are perfectly accounted for in that realm. Like I said on the show, month or two, again, time is just totally irrelevant to me in my mind. But whenever we talked about NIL and the changes with rev share and all those things, I think they kind of viewed a lot of their kind of big picture branding talk and how all of that was going to work moving forward with a guy like Tyron Stokes in mind, that if there was ever a perfect Nike kid who could be the face of a big brand like Kentucky, I think Tyron Stokes is the perfect example, and they've used him as internally as the top example, and I think that's going to reflect in the money and what it's going to cost to get a guy like Tyron Stokes. So all of those things put together, as of July 29th, I do like where Kentucky sits, and we'll see if Mark Pope can close on that. But I think it would be a massive way to kind of get that 2026 class rolling off of what we feel is going to be a really, really fun 2025-2026 basketball season for the Cats, Sean.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, that certainly sounds like Kentucky's in a good spot, and it would be a massive thing for Mark Pope in this program. But we know right now, too, that this team's shaping up to be a good one on the court as well.
Yeah. So I think we can wrap this thing up here. Again, apologize for the random like quietness and the delays and just the like, where did Jack go? Well, he got, a very surprise baby coming his way 2 weeks earlier than anybody expected in the middle of just absolute chaos with recruiting and I missed all of the La Familia stuff. I got to watch it at home on TV, but I got credentialed. I was ready to go watch and support the former Cats. Didn't get to go to a single game, so that part sucked. But we're gonna hit kind of a quiet period with the team going home, and we'll be able to kind of probably fit a guest or two in during that period before we really start ramping up with the preseason. September on, because October is Big Blue Madness and the preseason games, exhibitions, and all that. I mean, it's right here, Sean. I can't believe how close we are to all of that. It just feels like we just blinked and we went from, losing to Tennessee in Sweet 16 to where we are today. So I'm excited of how quickly it's all moving, because I think there's going to be a lot of fun stuff to talk about as the season rolls on.
Absolutely. I mean, it's here. Like once you get through this going home period and classes start, then it's transitioning into exhibition season.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's go ahead and get out of here, Sean. You can tell fans where to find your work, or they can just read the screen.
Yeah, it's right there, _Coach S. Smith.
You can find me on Twitter at Jack Pilgrim KSR. Go subscribe to KSR Plus. Again, all the stuff that we talked about on today's show, I put in an Intel piece last week, kind of in the middle of the baby craziness, kind of said, hey, apologize for my, abrupt departure, but here are a couple nuggets to kind of pass the time. So all the stuff that we talked about was on KS Board First. It will always be on KS Board First. So make sure you go subscribe there. Make sure you're subscribed here. Hey, we didn't get to talk. Steven got to keep his job. We got to 50,000 subscribers. I warned everybody he was going to get fired if we didn't get to 50,000. So shout out Steven. He got to keep his job and live to see another day. So shout out Steven, and shout out to the KSR YouTube channel. If you're not subscribed, to make sure Steven keeps his job, make sure you go subscribe there, like this. We appreciate each and every one of you for tuning in and your patience. It's been a very hectic month, but a very rewarding month for us here in the Pilgrim household. So thank you for your patience, and hopefully this is the start of a much more consistent product here at this point moving forward. I get back from my paternity leave Sunday, so we should have just a normal set schedule this point forward, and lots of good stuff to come, Sean.
Yep, and looking forward to it.
Absolutely. Well, for Jack Pilgrim, for Shawn Smith, for Stephen Peak, we will catch you next time. Go Cats.